Hi, my name's Dana Rivero, and I'm a city councilor in New Bedford, and I'm here with Paul Cusack, who's running for state rep.
Yeah, thank you, Dana.
Yeah, so who is Paul Cusack? Tell us a little bit about your background, sir.
Yeah, sure. I'm a shell fisherman here in the town.
Oh.
We're right next door in Katuitt for a place called the Katuitt Oyster Company. And I spend most of my daytime and week actually out on the water with a small team of guys bringing in oysters. That's my primary, that's what I'm doing. But we're also doing this race for state rep to be the state representative for the second Barnstable. And so I hope I get a chance to be sent up to Boston in the State House this fall.
So what's special about this area that you want to represent?
This is an extraordinary place. I mean, it's been an amazing part of American history for 400 years. You know, we're coming up on some very important 400-year anniversaries,
Oh.
right? Think about it, 1620 is when the Pilgrims originally landed, right, at P-Town, and then eventually ended up across the bay. So we played an incredibly important role locally in the American story. And now it's where my parents chose to live. And when I got out of the service and I had a chance to choose where I was going to live, I was like, I want to live on the Cape. And there's a bunch of reasons. I love, my mom says when I'm going over the bridge, she was like, call me when you reach the bridge. That's like a part of the experience of coming back and being welcomed on the Cape. And I love things like outdoor showers and the osprey and great white sharks and oysters. And, at the center of all that is water quality and water and the environment and sort of the interplay between the environment and people and the land. And I think there's a real opportunity to meet some unmet needs because all those systems are under some stress around here.
Right.
And I feel like there's a good opportunity there for a state rep to address a bunch of it. Yeah.
Cool.
And also the job sounds super fun.
Doesn't it?
Right? You get to do this?
I'm not a rep, but,
yeah, but
I see them, and they look like they're engaged in really enjoying it.
you're a city councilor, right?
Yes.
And so that's super fun for you?
It is.
Yeah.
At times it is not, but
Right.
we go with the 80%
All right.
instead of the 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
So next question,
Sure.
sir, and that will be, how do you plan on partnering with vulnerable communities like the LGBTQ, communities of color, disabled, so that they can better protect themselves and move further along in their destiny
Yeah.
with equality?
Yeah. Yeah, equality is definitely one of those cornerstone aspects of what we're trying to
Is
accomplish
this
here.
area very diverse, first of all?
I would say not on this side of the district, but the district as a whole is. So yeah, so hopefully I'd be able to be the representative for the larger Hyannis area, and Hyannis has positioned itself. It's a gateway city to a certain extent,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah.
I've never
Well,
heard it described that way. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's got the airport, right?
Yes.
It's got the ferries.
Yes.
Yeah, the highway runs through it, the bus line, the trains, they end there.
Right.
And that brings with it a ton of opportunity, but a certain number of challenges. And there's a lot of diversity in Hyannis and within the entire community. But, this is a campaign that's really focused on trying to make our community a little healthier and a little more prosperous, but also more equitable. And that's about being inclusive. Pluralism is so incredibly important to this experiment in self-governments that we have in America. And I feel like there's a huge portion of our neighbors whose political will goes uncaptured,
Right.
Unrepresented, with points of view that never get any hearing. That it's not that they just don't get invited to the table, like they've never even heard of the table in the first place.
Right.
And so the communities that you mentioned, there's a lot of Portuguese-speaking immigration that has happened in this particular region. A lot of that dates back historically centuries, and it has to do with the fisheries and the Cape. And be aware of that, and then come to the modern day and find that community isn't fully integrated into what is going on within the halls of power around here is really, I think it's unfortunate. And so I had a great community conversation with the Portuguese sort of community leaders around here. Same with the African American community. But, there's a lot of conversation around here that's about who's a true Cape Codder and stuff.
Right.
And I think,
Oh, really? That's
yeah,
interesting.
that's a part of our civic discussion down here, right? Because there's this term called washershores, people who just sort of supposedly came a little bit later. we all washed ashore, right? And so, I don't know, to call yourself a true Cape Codder, I feel like is a little bit exclusionary. I don't really, I'm psyched for people to be proud of their heritage and whatever circumstances that their family has managed to navigate to get to their version of the American dream. But if it's used for exclusionary purposes, then I don't feel like it's a ton of appeal. And so I think we try to set an example by talking a lot about pluralism and inclusivity and going out and doing the hard work of like trying to get people registered to vote, which is a big part of the challenge. And to trust folks. A lot of trust has been eroded in certain communities around here. You know, there is a relationship between some elements of law enforcement locally and the federal needs to enforce immigration law that has driven people back into the shadows of our community. And that's got to be reversed because people are doing things like not calling 911 when they should be calling the police when there's an emergency, when there's violence being threatened or in their life. But there's also people on a much smaller scale, kids not going to school or not going to different appointments because they don't want their name listed somewhere. They don't want to be participating in a system in which they feel like their actual participation could boomerang on them and they could cause them sort of immigration status related problems further down the line. And so trying to have an approach in which all voices, there's so many voiceless folks that are marginalized, and so we're really focused on those folks in particular around here.
Well, sounds like a very inclusive campaign, so that's exciting.
Awesome, thank you.
So what's a recent accomplishment you're proud of, and a recent failure, not necessarily within your campaign, but that you've seen that you've learned from?
Yeah, sure. I think probably I'm still pretty excited about having graduated from Ranger School.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean,
that was a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
What does that entail,
Ranger School? Yeah, it's about 60 plus days spent in the mountains and the swamps of the American South, pretty much with restricted caloric intake, restricted amount of clothing.
So you were on Survivor with no cameras.
There you go. That's a really, okay, that just cut right through. That's perfect. Yeah. And at the end, you get a thing called a Ranger tab, which you wear on your shoulder. And it's not something that you do alone. Just like the work here on the Cape won't be done alone. You graduate from a Ranger School class primarily with about 12 or 15 folks that you relied on for those previous 60 days. Because sometimes you're going to be too cold, sometimes you're going to be too tired, sometimes you're going to be too wet, you know, too hungry. Any of those things can happen. Those exact same things can happen in a region like this as well, and it takes all of us sort of pulling each other forward. And so that's the experience I had in the service, and for me it still stands out as a pretty great accomplishment for myself. I think I graduated at 40, which put me a little bit like close to twice the age of the average person I was competing with. So that for me is still a point of pride, but again, everything in the service is a group-oriented exercise. So I think I'm supposed to have a pretty good answer for something that I've failed in or found a little bit difficult or challenging recently.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, but again, it was a group thing, and this is as well. And so maybe at this point in time, I'm searching my mind for the things that have been more challenging, or I don't know exactly how you phrased that last question, but I don't want to duck it.
Right.
I want to answer what
I
you're
hear
asking.
You. I think, like, if I were to think, I would think, like, just in terms of something that I've learned from failure is watching, like, Congress, their inability to work together. So for me, I try to bring that with council, because even though I work with them, sometimes we just disagree, and sometimes it's more ego-based than topic-based. So it's like learning, watching that, and saying, okay, how can I learn from that and turn it around so that here we can come to some sort of middle ground.
Yeah. Putting people first, right?
Yeah.
Instead of putting party first, putting your ego first.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say all my experiences were culminated within my service in the military, but that's another perfect example. You go into some place like a U.S. Army Ranger Battalion, and you're dealing with Americans from all walks of life.
Right.
And you totally have to put sort of whatever bias you might bring to the exchange to the side.
Right.
You effectively have one mission, and you know what that is every night, and you know that you're going to rely on everybody within your group to make sure that that mission it succeeds. And so that requires putting a bunch of differences aside and focusing on the mission at hand. at one point in time in American history in the 1970s, 80% of Congress, for instance, was a veteran of either World War II, Korea, or Vietnam. Now it's below 15%.
Wow.
So if you talk about all the different ways that maybe, partisanship has been on the rise, and sort of paralysis has also been growing in places like Washington, D.C., that sclerosis in part comes from the inability of folks to sort of like just stay focused on the mission and reach across the aisle.
Right.
But I feel like that tide is turning presently. Yeah, as we see just more and more people from, more and more women, more minorities and veterans all lining up to find themselves in accountable positions this fall. A lot of people are running for office. It's really exciting. Yeah,
it is. And also, so how will you keep Massachusetts stable with such turmoil at the national level?
Yeah. We have national level turmoil for sure, but we have it here too on the very local level.
Yeah.
Town government, county government, what goes on up in Boston. So I think it's easy for us to pivot towards the national scene, but we got to be responsible for what goes on in our own backyard.
Right.
And I think it's easy sometimes to just be like, oh, poo-poo on DC and all that stuff, and that all those problems trickle down to us, but we cause our own, for sure, here on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm a little bit more focused, I've got some things that I say about the character of our national leadership. I'm unenthusiastic about it.
Okay.
I really, I think that everybody's put on the earth for a reason, and that reason can include being a bad example. And I think a very big bad example is being set, and I think it allows us to sort of imagine what it is we'd like to have our representatives be like, and how they should conduct themselves. So we're trying to set a little bit of an example around here, as well as to raise our sights and aim a little bit higher, which I know is a phrase that's used in other campaigns around here. But I think we're settling for something below what we're worth at this point in time, and so I'd like to help restore some of, at least the idealism in one small corner of Massachusetts in the Commonwealth.
Right.
But if you look back at the recent historic past and what's gone on, especially in places like the State House, I can imagine that a lot of people are like, why would you go from the most trusted institution in America, the U.S. military, to one with incredibly low, job approval ratings? You made a similar choice, right? You joined
yeah.
an effort.
I did. I wasn't in the military, so I didn't come from such an esteemed background, but
you signed up to do a job in which you effectively can become a human piñata. And so that right? Was that a tough transition for you to make?
No, for me it was just more about I wanted some things different in my community, and I knew that, I had a voice and that I could do it. And I thought it was important for other people that look like me and other little girls to see someone like me who's totally different from most of the other counselors and has a very different background. My dad was a Black Panther. He's in jail for 13 years, a murder didn't commit. So it's important that kids, they know that I used to go to Walpole to visit my dad, and I'm here as the city councilor,
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Wow, nice. That's an interesting bit of bio to share with us. Thank you. Yeah.
So, fun question.
Yeah.
Morning, coffee or tea, and how do you
coffee.
take it?
Yeah.
How do you take it?
Through Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, no, but I mean, do you put milk, or do you
milk and sugar?
There you go.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit desserty, I guess.
Oh, really? Oh, a sweet coffee drink. That's interesting.
Not overly done, but a little bit.
just to make the morning a little tolerable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So binge shows. What is your favorite show to binge? Doesn't seem like you have much time.
I gotta be honest with you. I've been watching a lot of the Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox are just
are they playing now? Is it season? They really are playing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
well,
I watched.
That's good.
Okay.
God knows it feels like a binge. Those games go on for 9 years.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
We're doing pretty good.
Oh.
They're having a historically good season.
Really?
Yeah.
Very good.
So it's one of those shows that you can watch because you don't really have to participate and do work. So the television's on, watching the Red Sox.
You can multitask.
There's a chance that they win the most games in a regular season that they've ever won. So,
really?
Yeah.
So then they get to go to the finals.
Then they would end up going to the playoffs. Yeah.
Nice.
Totally different second season. So.
French fries and ketchup. Are you on the French fry guy or a side ketchup guy?
Oh wow. I think is can I split? I think I do them both, if that's all right.
You can't do both.
I don't think I've
If
ever
you're
been
a
asked
guy-
that question.
Because I'm a side person, and the thought of ketchup on my fries, I'm like, I don't even want to eat them.
Yeah.
Because I'm a dipper.
You're a dipper.
Yes.
Right. I think I might be a dipper too, and I'm not just saying that to like side with you on
You're
this
right.
very important issue, but I think you might be right. I might be a dipper because of that. You just don't. Yeah.
Those other
Okay.
people, I don't even know what
Yeah.
happened.
Okay.
That they would just put ketchup all over fries. But, so dog person or cat person, or all just animal person?
I don't want to like. I definitely don't want to.
Do you like all animal, or do you not? You probably don't even have time for an animal.
I love animals. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Liberace. Can we get Liberace?
That's my.
Yeah.
I'm a
yeah.
dog and cat
Right,
person.
yeah.
But my cat hates
Yeah.
me, and my dog
Hopefully
just tolerates
Liberace
me.
didn't take off.
He's always off for the bigger
Okay,
and better
there you
deal.
go.
He saw a big
Liberace's
house and
inside.
he's like,
Okay,
I'm out.
all right. Yeah, Liberace's
Well,
good.
thank you for
Awesome,
this.
Dana. This has
was
been
awesome.
very cool.
I know everyone got a lot out of this, and you have a really interesting background.
Oh, thank you
Really
for saying that.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you do too,
I
Dana,
can't
from what
wait.
you just
Like,
shared.
your voice there is going to be, I think you're going to be able to bring the team together and really focus on the mission.
Awesome. Appreciate you
So
saying
good
that.
luck to you.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
Awesome.
And
Cool.
that was Paul Cusack, who's running for state rep.